Welcome to our discussion today, Strong Enough to Thrive, a conversation with flourishing companies, Excel Heating and Cooling, and Sigora Solar. Thank you for coming today. I hope everyone is healthy and well. I'm Amy Belay, Vice President of Contractor Success at Pearl Certification, and I'm pleased to be hosting this webinar in partnership with the Air Conditioning Contractors of America. We're passionate about providing valuable insights and information to help you grow your business and thrive in the new world we find ourselves in. A couple of housekeeping items. Everyone is muted, given the number of attendees. If you have questions, please use the Q&A function, which you will find at the bottom middle of your toolbar in the Zoom platform. I'll be managing the questions and our presenters will answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation. We are recording this webinar in addition to streaming it on Facebook. We'll share the link to the recording as soon as we can. And you're welcome to use the chat box throughout. We will be monitoring that, but it won't be where questions will come from. So please use the Q&A box. So for those that might not know Pearl Certification certifies the high-performing features of a home so that they can be valued at the time of sale or refinance. And we do this through an elite network of contractors who certify their installs, which has the ancillary benefit of allowing homeowners the confidence to choose the right partner, the right contractor to make those improvements to their home. Our contractor partners report on average an increase of 5% in their close rates when they use Pearl on every job. You can learn more about Pearl by going to pearlcertification.com or contact me at the end of the presentation where you'll find my contact information. And a little bit about our sponsor, and I'm particularly excited about this one. The Air Conditioning Contractors of America is the nation's premier trade association for HVACR contractors. ACCA has created nationally recognized and industry endorsed standards needed to ensure that these systems are properly installed and maintained, some of which that receive points in our certification system at Pearl. You can learn more about ACCA at their website located here on the screen. And I'm particularly excited about this partnership, or about the sponsorship, because ACCA and Pearl are coming together to form a partnership. We share our commitment to making the hidden aspects of the home's value visible. So we're launching a new exciting partnership to help contractors more effectively maintain their commitment to excellence. Stay tuned for more information in the weeks ahead. So I'm going to introduce our panelists here in a moment, but first just to kind of give a sense of how we're going to operate today. This is really a conversation. I'll ask Logan and Jay a series of questions, and then we'll facilitate Q&A from you, the audience. So please do post your questions in the Q&A box. Let's have some fun and have a good conversation. So our first panelist is Logan Landry, the CEO of Sigora Solar. He has a rich history in the solar industry. He started a company in Louisiana called BLG Solar Solutions, which he grew to 100 million before selling it. After BLG, he managed operations for Posigen Solar. When he moved over to Sigora Solar as CEO, he's led the exponential financial growth in just a few short years. And Sigora Solar has been a Pearl partner since 2017. Our other panelist is Jay Monger. He's the president of Excel Heating and Cooling in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Jay started with Excel in 2013, although the company's been in business since I think 1953 as a partial owner and is now the sole owner of the company. Excel focuses on residential and light commercial service with a dedication to quality customer service. Excel has also been a Pearl partner since 2017. So the way that I'd like to have this conversation go is actually have Jay and Logan introduce yourselves in a little more detail, talk about your business, and then we can get into some of the questions. So Logan, why don't we start with you?
All right. Well, hi everyone. I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Amy, for hosting this. I am, as she indicated, CEO of Sigora Solar. I joined Sigora in late 2016, but I've been in the solar industry for about 12 years now. Started in the industry in Southern California, moved to Louisiana to start BLG Solar Solutions, and ended up selling that to a larger organization and running their operations. When I joined Sigora, we are founded in 2011, based out of Central Virginia, corporate office here in Charlottesville, originated in Waynesboro. When I joined in 2011, we really served Central Virginia. We did some work in DC and some and minimal work in Maryland. Since then, we really changed the model a bit to incorporate energy efficiency with everything that we do. So we were no longer just selling and installing solar residentially, but taking a more holistic approach and determining how we could not only produce energy for a customer, but reduce their consumption and increase the efficiency of their home. With that new model, which we call our Produce and Reduce program, we really began to expand exponentially, not only expanding our footprint in existing markets, but opening new markets. And now we serve about 13 states actively, with continued expansion plans, possibly in 2020, depending on how the rest of the year unfolds, but certainly in 2021 as well. Residential is still our primary business, the bulk of our business, but we have a commercial division as well that serves anywhere from small commercial projects to very large commercial projects, and that has grown pretty exponentially over the last few years as well. We see tremendous growth opportunity with that over the next couple of years also.
Great. Thank you, Logan.
No, thank you. Thanks for
Jay.
having me.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so yeah, I'm Jay. So XL Heating and Cooling, we're a relatively small HVAC contractor in Harrisonburg, Virginia. So Logan is just over the mountain from me in Charlottesville. We're in the western part of the state's Shenandoah Valley. We are experiencing a beautiful, cool, rainy spring here, and making challenges even more interesting than what we expected. But yeah, I got into this industry in kind of the end of 2012. The opportunity came up as a business opportunity to own part of the company, and was looking for a change, and decided that HVAC sounded interesting, and jumped on board, and quickly learned how wide a breadth this industry really has. Our focus is primarily residential, light commercial. We sometimes call it around here resimercial. So mostly working on that, the smaller size stuff. We've got 7 technicians and around 8 installers, kind of depending on how you count your people that are out on FMLA and COVID sick leave and all of that stuff that we didn't think about before. Yeah, and primarily focusing on quality installation, quality service, doing things right, doing right by our customers, and by doing right by our customers, then providing them with quality and less energy consumption through that. I do just want to give a shout out to ACCA for helping out with this webinar. Besides Pearl, ACCA, it's a fantastic organization. If you're at all involved in the HVAC trade and not a member of ACCA, I would highly encourage you to take a look at that. They've been a huge resource to us through this time period with information and updates to keep us going. So,
Thanks, Jay. So let's dive into this conversation. First, I think just to set the foundation, let's talk a little bit about how COVID-19 has affected your business operationally, and how you treat employees, sort of, if you can give your context there. Maybe Jay, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think our business is in people's homes. That's the primary function for us. We do, some commercial. So as this all started unfolding at the beginning of March, it was pretty intimidating. And we tried to take a responsible approach immediately, with the piece that it is also important to keep going with things, to keep people systems operating safely and efficiently in their homes. So immediately we moved to most all staff working remotely. We, at this point, have a couple people who work in the office, somewhat related to technology situations at their home. We are out a little bit in the mountains, so we get some lesser internet connections when you get out into the, into the woods. But we immediately stopped our technicians from coming into the office, implemented safety controls for in people's homes. So going to gloves, shoe covers, we were already doing some of it, eye protection, and followed the mask thing kind of as the recommendations went back and forth within it. We did take the approach that if they're saying to conserve N95 masks for healthcare professionals, that our guys shouldn't be wearing those into people's homes because it may create controversy for the technicians that they, even more awkward situation than they're already in. We've moved immediately to remote meetings, signed up for our subscription on Zoom to be able to host, and continue our weekly meetings. We started a YouTube channel immediately to do daily communications to the staff. Ultimately, a big piece for us was how do we stay connected? It's such a big part of building culture in a company is staying connected. What are we going to do to take that place? We have seen a reduction in business, a lot of postponements, not necessarily cancellations, but more postponements within it. So wanting to delay work at their home until the end of May. We're getting ready to come up on some very busy schedule weeks from all of the people in March and the beginning of April that rescheduled into the end of May. We did keep doing maintenance because we felt like maintenance, particularly where we were, initially there were not very many cases in our area. We're now actually one of the highest per capita population infected rates in our area, but back in March and beginning of April, we didn't have hardly any infection at all. And part of our piece with that is that if they're telling us that things are going to get worse, we want to check up on people's systems and make sure they're operating and functioning for the hot summer while we can. And we actually asked our guys to slow down and to give people even more than what they're paying for, just to make sure that we don't have an unfortunate callback that happens in every industry. But we don't want to go back if things do get catastrophically worse come summertime when people are trapped inside and it's 100 degrees out. So that's kind of what's, between that and then people out on various different leaves. I didn't expect in our industry to have so many people that are out on family medical leave from it. I think traditionally we think about that more often than not, the blue collar workers that tend to be male are not as often affected by that, but we have 3 people out on that right now, and we've had various people who've been quarantined due to contact with people that are infected with COVID, and so it's also affected our back end for navigating all of those different programs and things as a small business.
Got it. Logan, you want to chime in on this one?
Sure. I appreciate it. It's not terribly different. Clearly the first couple of weeks when really all of this began for us here, first couple of weeks of March, things were certainly more chaotic, but everyone was living in more uncertainty even than we have today. We really didn't know what was going to shut down, when, for what period of time. We at Sigora, we didn't know at the time with any certainty, at least, whether we would be considered essential services or not. And so there was certainly, like with each of you, there was a lot of confusion and a bit of panic amongst some of the team in the very beginning. Until we started to ease those concerns. Again, just the normal, especially as schools began to be shut down, and we have many, of course, employees that at the time were not remote, and now we had to figure out how they were going to homeschool their children and work. And so those first couple of weeks were pretty rough, and we certainly saw a reduction in sales. Fortunately, not much interruption operationally with installations that were taking place for systems that had already been sold. After the first couple of weeks, things seemed to get much better, just in the sense of we knew what the future, at least to some extent, was going to look like. We knew that we were going to be, we were certain that things were going to be uncertain for quite some time. We knew that we were going to be an essential business. We started making plans and pivoting quickly to figure out, how we could maximize our performance, and most importantly, keep the safety of our employees and our customers at the forefront of our minds moving forward. And so after that, planning started to unroll, and certainly things changed, much like Jay, and I'm sure most others. Many of our employees, if not certainly a majority of our employees are working remotely. We do have some folks that work in office space, again, for a variety of different reasons. But even there, every precaution is being taken to ensure that everyone is safe. Lots of things changed in the field. I mean, again, much like any other solar company or HVAC company, safety is always a primary concern of ours, but clearly now different precautions had to be taken that we never would have accounted for before. There was never I guess, a need, if you will, for hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes and masks and gloves and varying levels of eye protection depending on what people were doing. And so all of those things certainly have changed and impacted the business. We have been very fortunate to have stabilized a bit, and while we still have a reduction in sales from where we anticipated being this year pre-COVID, we are still seeing increases from last year. And so we're continuing to see growth through this, but it definitely has presented its challenges, and it's most certainly a different way of life for us at Sigora. There's no doubt.
Is there a difference in what type of services customers are purchasing? I mean, from your perspectives, Logan, are people still going for the energy efficiency upgrades, or are they going straight solar? And what are you seeing there?
No, they are. I mean, again, our model is a bit unique in the sense that we incorporate energy efficiency into every solar project. So it's built in as a package. So every customer with rare exception, but every customer that purchases solar with us receives a BPI energy audit, and from the results of that audit, they get a selection of upgrades that will give them, the most impact, and of course based on budget. And then there's upgrade opportunities available beyond that. So all of our customers are still fortunately getting the energy efficiency component because it is, again, part of the package. From a solar perspective, we've seen an increase in a pretty drastic increase, about a doubling percentage-wise of customers that are opting for energy storage, battery options. And we suspect, even though, this pandemic does not have any direct effect on utility or grids or things of that nature, it certainly brings out in people the need to be prepared for uncertainty and for times that are unprecedented and that at our best we never think are going to happen. So we've operationally we've seen a little bit of resistance on performing the energy efficiency improvements just yet. Understandably with many customers, because there is so much interaction and so much access inside the home, especially with the audits being conducted throughout the entire home and not just limited to one specific part in the home. But even that percentage has been lower than we've expected. And I think a lot of that just has to do with proper communication up front and taking all of those precautions and letting the customer know in advance the precautions that we're going to take, and then holding ourselves accountable to doing that when we're in the home.
Thanks. Jay, what about you? Are you seeing a difference in either what people are purchasing or kind of how they're making purchasing decisions?
Yeah, we definitely have seen a change in consumer behavior. You know, just from the nature of the question of whether to do maintenance or not to do maintenance. You know, I think it starts with that piece of it. And we understand, we you know, don't criticize anyone for their decisions related to, you know, to what to do or not to do with their home and their safety from it. If they want to delay us from it, that's fine. You know, our guys are you know, we're very strict with them of maintaining their you know, their PPE stuff. Though, as I think all of us that are business owners probably have to admit, workers will be workers and they will do what they want when we're not looking. And we had a situation just the other week that got very close to disastrous for a lot of staff members because of that. So it's a good reminder for people. But delayed decisions, most definitely. So we're often in a, you know, a question of to repair or to replace your equipment. Previously, those decisions were often made pretty quickly from our customers because, well, my system's not working or it's heading towards failure. I've got to make a costly repair. I'll make that decision. Those decisions are taking a much longer time than what we've experienced in the past. And as we sit here and finally the weather and the 10-day forecast does not start with all 50s, 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 and starting to get to where there's one day in that forecast that says 80 in it, all of a sudden we've heard more in the last 5 days from people saying, I want to go ahead with this than we have in the 4 weeks before that piece of it. So definitely the, you know, people being at home, but weather being temperate, kept decisions kind of in the limbo from it. And I think that's the big part. We've tried to compensate with offering financing plans that have 6 months with no payment and no payment, no interest, and then whatever term that we previously would have presented to them, whether it would be, you know, 3 years, 7 years, or 10 years after that period. And that's also been helpful in people to, you know, hey, I don't need to worry about this for the next 6 months. And then I can start a low monthly payment onto it. So we've definitely seen the behavior of people change very rapidly, and it's kind of stayed there with it. We never had demand during this time period outside of a little bit of heating. So, you know, we're very curious when the weather does get hot to see how people, whether things are the same as what we're used to, or it continues to have different reactions from consumers within it.
As the world begins to reopen, I think I just saw that at least in Northern Virginia, they have plans to start opening things back up. Do you have any insights on kind of your plan as that happens? Like how has your plan shifted with the new world we find ourselves in? And I'll start with you, Jay.
So yeah, I mean, we've been following things pretty closely in that regard, and that would be my encouragement to everyone is, you know, become an information guru. Preferably from trusted sources would be my recommendation, but it's good sometimes to read even from some of the questionable ones. But understand, particularly when the governor does an address, I try to watch them or at least fast forward through the slides and catch the key points. When they came up with their 3-phase plan for reopening Virginia back a week ago, I think, you know, yeah, I think it was about a week and a half that they came up with that. We immediately met as a leadership team and said, okay, people are going to read about this, hear about it on the news tonight, read about it tomorrow morning. What are we going to tell them that each phase means for us? And we immediately went down and laid out that, hey, phase 1 doesn't mean anything. Phase 2 is going to mean that you might be allowed to come into the office to talk to your supervisor that is there, but we're not going to start meetings. We're not going to start removing PPE requirements. Our guys are required to text their supervisor their temperature and that they promise to wear their mask and all of their PPE all day long on the job each morning. So that's not going to change in phase 1 or 2. And phase 3 is when we'll start considering in-person meetings and coming back to a more normal piece. And I would encourage that for everyone. When you start to hear about the reopening plans in your area, make your plan and communicate it. Our employees were very grateful, at least to know that, okay, so while all of this stuff that's coming out that it's changing on, Friday is the day, midnight Thursday is the day that some things change for us. The barbers can go back to cutting hair and some outdoor seating at restaurants, but really not too terribly much from where we are, at least our interpretation. So communicating to our guys immediately, our team, hey, nothing's changing phase 1, not much is going to change phase 2. They all told us they really appreciated knowing just what we were doing.
Thank you. Logan, same question for you. As the world begins to reopen, and kind of any insights on your plans for how you plan to address that?
Yeah, I mean, we're really monitoring it closely. There's reopening slowly and in phases of loosening some of these restrictions and starting to open up the economy a bit more. But there's also, of course, understanding that that doesn't mean that the risk out there has diminished any more so than it is today in many places. And so, for us, not a lot will change in phase 1, potentially phase 2. After that, we'll continue to watch and monitor the situation and see what happens. I mean, we're seeing already places that have opened a bit preemptively and with a lifting of too many restrictions that are now seeing some significant spikes in numbers again, and who knows what will happen with that. Will they potentially have to go back and start implementing more restrictions all over again? And so, we're just watching it closely. But as of now, on Friday, nothing will change in how we operate. We'll continue to sell systems with virtual presentations as we have pivoted to 100% of the time. We'll continue to perform our installations, but with all of the same PPE and protective practices in place that we have today. And over time, we'll evaluate that, and maybe a month from now, maybe 6 months from now, God forbid, but who knows? Whenever that opportunity presents itself to start lifting some of these internally, we'll do so. But in no way is our intent to mimic specifically, without any other considerations, what any of the local or state governments do in any of the markets that we serve. So we'll continue to be very safe and take all precautions and work remotely, and again, just kind of monitor it on a day by day, week by week, month by month basis.
Got it. I'd like to turn to a couple of questions that have come in from folks. One is, have any employees claimed that they've contracted COVID through work-related activity? I'm interested in the liability aspect. I'm going to start with Jay on this one.
Yeah, and we've had a few incidences. Specifically, we try to do a lot to prevent them from happening. But we realized 3 or 4 weeks ago that we had a little hole in our dispatching procedure, to where we were really doing a great job of reaching out to everybody the day before in regards to, is anybody sick in the home? Does anybody have COVID? Any symptoms? And if they answer yes to any of our questions, we won't service them. It was a rental property. And we were making sure that we were talking to homeowners before the truck rolled to the job that day, but we were not necessarily, we were relying on the 24-hour window for renters, for landlords. And we had a technician walk up to the door and someone meet him at the door and say, my infant daughter has tested positive to COVID-19, but I want you to fix my air conditioner. And, the technician walked away, but our policy has been that we rely on the medical professionals to make, the decision of whether someone needs to isolate or not. We found the medical professionals tend to be very, very, very cautious. So if you do rely on medical professionals and they ask if they should quarantine, the answer will be yes, and for 14 days, no matter what. So we had a definite situation there, and then we had another individual whose sister, who lives in the same home, shares very common living spaces. She is a nurse on the front lines and contracted the virus. And so we found out, he had been, exposed and then found out that through that, fortunately, employees were honest, but had been, around him on construction and install jobs and in the loading process that you try to manage as much as you can. But he was around other employees and none of them were wearing their masks or PPE equipment. So we were fortunate he tested negative, which, people were at least maintaining social distance through it. But yes, most definitely we have had employees that have been exposed and concerned. For the most part in our area and our employees, there is a fear of becoming sick, but there is not a blame that goes with it pointed at us as a company for putting them in harm's way. We know it from having gone through it a couple of times, but it does, every time it happens, it scares you. Because what if this is the one that ends up in a nasty lawsuit type situation where I think all of us can admit that the guidance of what we should and shouldn't do is confusing. And particularly when you get down to that liability legal side of it is where, to me, it really gets gray, because are we following the CDC workplace guidance, the OSHA workplace guidance? Does my state OSHA have any different guidance than regular OSHA? And what do I need to do to protect the livelihood of the company and the employees as a whole, for the company to keep going? So it's definitely a concern. We feel like we've had near misses at this point.
Logan, what about you?
We have been very fortunate. We have not had any scares to date. We have had a couple of customers who have postponed their installation because they were exposed and were self-quarantining. We had a couple of customers who unfortunately contracted COVID, but are either in the late stages of recovery or have recovered. But we were aware of that prior to any of our employees being in contact with them. So clearly we were able to avoid contact. But fortunately, no, employee-wise, we've had no issues. We had a couple when this first started to develop in publicly in March, who had just been traveling from spring break. We're in areas that had a lot of activity and had concerns and voluntarily self-quarantined. But fortunately, everyone's been okay. So we've been fortunate there. The liability thing is an interesting point, and I think I think it's one of those things we're going to see where it ends up. I was speaking with an attorney in Boston the other day, and he was talking at length. Again, it's a very interesting conversation, but he was talking at length about, from his perspective and many of those in his field, that they do think there's going to be a lot of legal action with employers, essential businesses. At the time, he was speaking more specifically to healthcare and the grocery industry. But there are a lot of that. And so I think it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. And that's why it's so imperative that every company takes every precaution that they possibly can, not just, of course, most importantly, first and foremost, for the safety of their employees and their customers, but then also the legal ramifications or potential legal ramifications that can follow from that, because these are unprecedented times. I mean, we've never in our lifetimes been in this situation where as an essential business, you're continuing to perform work, but there's no precedence for this. So the best thing we can do at this point is just, do everything, go above and beyond, do even more than we're asked to do to protect the health and well-being. And really that's all we can do at this point, and see how it does unfold. But it will be interesting to see over time what does transpire with some of the liability, what claims are made, and what kind of treatment those claims are given.
Another one for you, Logan, and maybe Jay, you may have something on this too. Are you seeing any impacts to your ability to coordinate with other trades?
We have not that I'm aware of. We do some coordination. It's a pretty low percentage of the time that we incorporate or coordinate with re-roofing as an example. My understanding, though, is that we have not had really any issue with that. Any trade that we would coordinate with is considered an essential service. They are working. So if there has been something, I'm unaware of it. Also, it's a pretty minimal amount of time that we have to do that. Like I said, there's the occasional roof rework, or more consistently would be our partnerships with home builders. And so we're installing solar during the construction process. So there is a lot of coordination there. But again, these are things that just haven't slowed down. They're taking extra precautions, but they're moving ahead just as they normally would. We have some markets where we subcontract our installations, which is not, it's less common. And we do have some markets like New York as an example, where those subcontractors are not working. In New York, they're not allowed to. They're not considered, the solar installation is not considered an essential service. They've been clearly much greater restrictions than other places. And we've got a couple of contractors in Illinois that, although considered an essential service, they have just chosen not to work for during this period of time. And so there's been a little bit of effect with subcontractors, but not so much in coordinating with other contractors in our core markets.
Thank you. Jay, anything to add there?
Yeah, so we would have had a different experience to where we most definitely have had issues with coordination, construction job slowdowns. We don't do a lot of construction, but we do a little bit to supplement, particularly trying to take projects during the non-peak seasons. We have definitely seen some of our contractors have shut down for 2 weeks. We've seen a larger job that we're participating in to where 2 companies actually quarantined. The electrician and the plumber quarantined their entire staff for a little bit. So we have, and I think some of that relates to we deal with a fair amount of smaller companies for trades, the plumbers and electricians around here, and we've developed relationships with them. And I think they're all around here experiencing similar things that we are, with a portion of the staff out on either sick leave, quarantined. We don't let our people work if they have a temperature or any symptoms. We see that from the partners we work with in the community. And so when everybody takes a 20 to 30% hit on their workforce that was already short to begin with, it definitely slows things down. Right now, we most certainly like our jobs that don't require any coordination.
Understood. A question back to you, Logan. Have you seen any impacts on the ability to do audits in the markets that you operate in? Like in Massachusetts, for example, and obviously in New York, it's completely shut down right now.
Yes, of course. New York, Illinois is another. where the solar construction was considered essential, the energy efficiency, auditing and energy efficiency improvements was not. California, another situation where it's very questionable. And so our partners in that market are not performing any energy efficiency at the moment. Here, kind of mid-Atlantic and Southeast, we've been able to proceed, and the majority of the time we've had cooperation with customers and willingness in any sign, of course, that they're uncomfortable, or of course, if we were to receive any indication from them that there were any health issues within the home, then we would postpone those. So we've got, probably, 10 to 15% of projects that could have flowed through the pipeline already and had the energy efficiency performed that have not in our core markets. And other than that, those outlying markets that I mentioned, there's been clearly, disruption, just really inability to perform there. But Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, we've been okay.
Okay. And another question for both of you, and you can decide your comfort level of answering this. Do you have a sense of how much your costs have gone up as a result of the additional precautions that you're taking? And if so, are you passing those costs along to your customers?
I would say that we really have not tracked that specific data set. And I think some of it is we've had reduced demand. We, right as this was all beginning late February, early March, actually brought on some new field staff. We had opportunity to be able to acquire a couple veteran technicians, which all of us that are in any sort of trade understand that when a good candidate walks through the door, you grab them. We actually, put out an offer letter to someone on March 16th. So we're, the day the governor is starting to announce, we're starting to hear closures, and from around the country, we said, we know it's coming, but we still want them to join our team. I would say the cost that we've seen is more unapplied time, shortness on hours as that demand, very early on, we saw lots and lots of postponements. As far as hand sanitizer and PPE, we haven't measured that cost specifically, and we have not changed our pricing whatsoever in this. So any of those costs we're not passing on. At the same time, we also looked at we feel that the purpose of the Payroll Protection Program loan and forgiveness program is to help companies offset some of this and keep their people employed, keep things going within it. So we also don't feel that it's fair, being that we've participated in that program, to up our costs and pass that on to customers.
Thanks, Logan.
Similar to Jay. I agree. I mean, the additional PPE cost really in the scheme of everything is going to be a very minimal percentage in comparison to revenue, as an example. So we haven't gone back and looked at those expenses and just how that ultimately relates to the amount of business that we're performing. But short answer would be sure. There's clearly going to be at a minimum an increase in cost of the additional protective measures that we're taking. Some decrease in efficiency for taking a little longer and practicing all of these all these measures that we've implemented. I think it's minimal really in the scheme of things, though, when compared against sales numbers or revenue numbers. Other than that, we haven't seen any impact in the market that's affected prices, and that was one of the concerns, especially when a lot of solar products are imported from China. And so when they were being hit the hardest, we expected some pretty drastic increases in shipping costs, potentially manufacturing delays that would force us to procure materials from different sources and pay a premium for those. We didn't see any of that. I don't hear much of that either throughout the industry. So that's a pretty fortunate thing. Really, it would just be, again, the minimal increase on PPE costs and some minimal decrease in efficiency just for the extra time that's being taken on each of these projects.
Great. This is another question with respect to employee compensation. Have you had employees ask for higher pay to compensate them for the risk, or have you offered that as an option? What's your approach to that?
We have not. That I'm aware of. I don't know. My our HR team might tell us might tell me a little bit differently. But to the best of my knowledge, we have had no situations where anyone has come to us requesting anything additionally. I mean, from the very beginning, of course, we've given everyone the opportunity. We've put every measure in place to protect people and given people the opportunity to not work if that's what was most comfortable and safest for them and their families. We haven't really had anyone take advantage of that offer, and we haven't had anyone ask for any additional pay that I am aware of. Our main focus, we have not, to answer the question fully, we also have not offered any additional pay. But we have made it very, very clear to our team as a whole from the very beginning, and continue to reiterate that message over and over again, that we are not here to survive this. We are here to thrive through this and to grow through this and to find every silver lining that we possibly can in the in the situation. And in order to do that, we need the team that is able and willing to step up and work a little, work smarter and more efficiently than they even have in the past. And when we come out of this victorious, as we know that we will, then there will be reward on the other side. But right now, like any good any good business, that's facing uncertainty in the world and in the market, you have to hold back everywhere that you can and try to prepare for the worst while you go out there and try to execute at the absolute best. So the main focus for us is I made a commitment, the leadership team made a commitment, we made it to all of our employees that the number one goal in all of this was to not lose any employees, aside from, of course, everyone's health and safety, but to not have to furlough or lay off or reduce anyone's pay. So while we're not giving increases, we are certainly doing everything in our power, and so far have been very successful at ensuring that no one has lost their employment, no one has had to take a cut in pay, and no one has had to be furloughed at this point. So that's our goal, and that's how we're moving forward. And we're lucky to have a very committed, loyal, and passionate team that want nothing more than to see Sigora always grow and prosper, especially through times like this. They know our commitment to them, and they in turn are very loyal and committed to us as well.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, so we mostly have heard from the employees. The main concern is, am I going to get my 40 hours? So we haven't heard the request for hazard pay we actually do a fair amount in regards to spiffs and commissions. I haven't even had people, asking, if they'll be reimbursed for lack of demand from that piece of it. But definitely, am I going to get my 40? If I have to go home, what's going to happen? And then the further confusion added by the payroll protection program loan of, well, can I just stay home and you have to pay me anyways? But not from a safety perspective, but just from interesting comments that happen we all have employees and deal with that. You have different pieces that come out at times. We considered initially, thinking about hazard pay. We heard other contractors talking about that were recipients of the PPP loan. With the advice of our accountant and attorney, decided that that was risky to go that direction, and didn't offer it for it. As a company, with business as it is, definitely in a reduced fashion, that we would wait to hear a request before we would even move further on that part of it. But to this point, at least that's come through our leadership team. We're not hearing anything, any murmurs or mumblings regarding that.
Got it. And another question for you, Jay. How will the sort of new world we're in impact your marketing? Like, will you take more of a focus on indoor air quality? And what's your thinking on that?
Yeah, so I kind of have two answers, and I'll answer the air quality and then the marketing piece. We have actually pulled back on some of our indoor air quality marketing. We are a bit concerned that there's a lot of confusion about what may or may not happen with in regards to that piece of it. And so we've said there's enough data that says UV might work, but it doesn't work in ductwork because the particles never stop for long enough to fry it. You start Googling, and right now somewhere that with a consumer, I think you can get in trouble. And we don't want that lawsuit down the road that says, well, you told me if I put in this UV light that my house was going to be safe from COVID. And it's so much of a risk for us that we want to talk about, in-home, the general benefits of indoor air quality. We're still talking about UV lights, but in terms of keeping your equipment clean, reducing biological growth in air handlers and furnaces and coils, the reasons why those products were done, but avoiding that piece. In regards to marketing in general, we have actually increased our marketing spend. To me right now, the dollar goes a lot further. We work with a company, Energy Circle, that does our marketing with it. They've been great to work with. We've added YouTube pre-roll videos for our area. So, I think our video just got finished production end of last week or beginning of this week. As we're moving into that arena because people are at home and people are watching a lot more TV and that piece. So how can we touch them with the message? We're open and we're here to serve. And that's been our big piece. And what we were told is that right now is a great time to increase marketing spend because a lot of people are choosing to cut costs in this time period and minimize. And we've chosen to try to maximize and get more for dollars and even more dollars than what we currently are doing.
Thanks, Jay. Logan, I'll turn that to you, less about the IAQ, but more about how your marketing has been impacted. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, look, very, very similar. We pivoted very quickly. We have a core message that just really doesn't change because it's relevant no matter what situation we're in as a country or a world. But we did modify it slightly, and really the main point that we changed in the message itself that we wanted to get across is that, and I'll paraphrase here, but basically, in a world of such uncertainty where nothing really for a period of time was certain, we provide a level of certainty in an area of their life that's very important to them, and that is, electricity, having electricity and power and consumption. The core message that doesn't change is that, we provide a lower rate of electricity. So we provide a net savings to most customers on month one, providing them, a net savings cash back into their pocket every month from reducing their electricity expenses and bringing down consumption through creating efficiencies within their home. And so all of those things actually play very well into a situation that we're in now, where you've got economic downturn, very high, what is anticipated that will be very high unemployment rates, and I ran solar businesses and other successful businesses through the Great Recession, so post 2008, and those companies in this industry that again pivoted quickly and focused on savings and really selling the end result versus the product itself grew in some cases exponentially, and did very well through that type of situation. And so that's exactly what we intend to do here. So again, yeah, from the very beginning, we've pivoted a bit, changed our marketing message to really just focus on certainty and taking control of every area of your life where you can, since there's so many areas that you don't have control. And then reminding that, you know, our product does a number of things. It increases your home value. It increases the health and safety of the home through the energy efficiency improvements. And again, it saves customers tens of thousands of dollars over the life of the system, but with immediate gratification of saving money on a monthly basis. So all things that we feel will be important to the masses as we go through this process. Everyone, even if you don't have concerns about your job and whether or not you're going to still have a place to call home work-wise in the next several months, you're still torturing yourself occasionally by looking at your 401k or your investment portfolio, and who knows whether there'll be a decrease. Fortunately, knock on wood, not to date, but who knows if there will be a drop in real estate value and housing crunches and so forth. So all of these uncertainties and all of this insecurity that exists, we actually do provide a solution that we talk about continuously. We're just, again, reiterating that message, pivoting slightly to focus it more on the situation that's at hand. And again, I saw great success with that through the Great Recession, and I certainly anticipate that we will here. Much like Jay, we're not spending less money; we're spending more money on marketing and being more creative with the paths that we choose. Things that normally wouldn't be, at least for us, an option. So no offense if they are to others. Because everything works in different markets and in different industries. But things that had become a bit antiquated in the solar industry, we're actually revisiting, like customized direct mail. That became a thing of the past when digital marketing over the past many years has really exploded. Now digital marketing is really challenging in the solar industry because not every solar company, but every salesperson just about has their own funnel that they've created and puts their own dollars into marketing. So it's hard to compete with all those ads, but no one has focused on direct mail in a long time. And that has become a bit of an activity for some people that are stuck at home and in some cases trapped 24/7, 7 days a week with their children and their spouses and people they're not accustomed to being trapped in a home with 24 hours a day. So sometimes just walking to the mailbox and making a daily event of that is a getaway. TV, we're doing television advertising again. We haven't done that in 3 years, but to Jay's point, people are home. They're watching potentially more television or Netflix or YouTube. And so, yeah, getting creative and really revisiting those things, but by no means scaling back, actually putting quite a bit into it. I definitely believe that's the right path, and it is the opportunity, because this is the time that instinctively people pull back and they scale back. But those that stay out there in front of others and very in front of an audience consistently will come out of this winner for sure. So
thank you. So a final question, as I will, and while you're answering, I'll pull up our contact information. You know, a lot of companies, especially, well, on both trades, sit sort of on the edge of being in business and out of business. And this has, you know, had a substantial impact on a lot of those businesses. I'd be curious to hear you talk about what sets you apart from the businesses out there, and why you believe you're going to thrive on the other side of this. Maybe Logan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it starts at the top. As leaders, you have to be able to say that confidently. You have to genuinely believe that, and you've got to be committed to do whatever it takes to make that happen. You know, you have to not be afraid to fail in trying new things and pivoting quickly. But you also have to have enough fear of failure that you will do whatever it takes because you refuse to fail. And, you know, that's something that I'm very fortunate to have a team around me that has the same passion and the same drive and the same ambition. And I think always, not just during this time of uncertainty, but always that trickles down to the team. It's why we have, again, employees that have been with us, I'm sure much like many others here from the very beginning. They're committed, they're loyal, they're passionate. They want to see the company grow and succeed just as much as they want to see themselves grow and succeed personally. So having that team around you, having that commitment, being willing to do different things and try things differently, and just not being afraid to get out there and try something different is probably, to me, the most important thing. Beyond that, it's just an absolute desire to be successful and not allowing the thought of failure to even present itself. Doesn't mean you don't plan and have contingency plans and take precautions, but you know deep down inside that you will succeed, and you relay that message with enough confidence and enough consistency to your team that they know and believe that too. And when that happens, they really, I mean, we have at least seen that our teams are out there doing what they normally do. If anything, we have people that are giving more. They're raising their hand and saying that they've got more bandwidth and more capacity. And what else can I help with? And that's been incredibly encouraging to see. But I believe it starts at the top. I believe it starts with leaders that know and believe that they can do this. For me, again, and for anyone else that's part of this today, that, you know, thrived in some sense through the Great Recession. In the scheme of things, from a business perspective, this is not that much different. There's always going to be obstacles and always bumps in the road. And if you're distracted and you're discouraged by each and every one of them, then there's not much chance or hope out there. So this is just another bump in the road, and you keep going. You may be crying, but you keep going.
Thank you. Jay. Yeah,
I mean, I think very much similar to what Logan has spoken to. Leadership, you know, a commitment that you are going to succeed. You know, just that mental attitude, and it gets, you know, it gets long, it gets tiresome. You know, we say, you know, to our friends, you know, it feels like we're working. It doesn't feel like we are working twice as much for half the money. You know, because when the sales stop coming through, you're working hard. And, you know, as a small business, you know, my wife and I are, you know, actively trying to figure out how to utilize QuickBooks to do payroll with the FFCRA paid sick leave and paid FMLA. You know, that added countless hours to our week that we didn't get much return on, other than, you know, our employees being grateful for us, you know, doing that. And at the end of the day, what I would say my confidence comes from is company culture. And, you know, it's we that choose to invest in company culture, you do so, and you do it with the, you know, you feel good culture in good times, but man, you need good culture in tough times. And we have been extremely glad that we've made that investment over the years. Right before this all kicked off, we had actually presented our, for the COVID season back in March, we did a full company presentation of our budget and business plan for the year. And we had this great team dinner and buy-in from employees and spouses that were brought along. And, you know, the next day we were kind of smacked in the face as closures started around the country. And that culture is what gives me confidence, you know, the buy-in from people. And we've committed to communicating and being honest with our employees. You know, if we knew something was going on, we would tell them about it. We've been upfront with every time that we've had a near miss with the COVID situation. We've notified everybody involved immediately, even though our lawyers have said you're not at the point where you need to notify. We've taken that step. We've taken steps with what programs we're pursuing. We've been vocal about the confusion within it and addressed rumors that we've seen from it. And we've despite not being able to see our employees face to face, we've taken a much bigger piece of communication on a regular basis. So we actually feel like we're communicating better than we had been previously, through that piece. And that's what gives us confidence that we are not surviving, we're thriving.
And with that, I'd like to thank you both, Jay and Logan, for your time and the conversation and your candor. And I'd like to thank the attendees for your great questions. There are a few we didn't get to, and I am sorry about that, but glad to see this was something that was of interest to folks. And also would like to thank ACCA. We're blessed to have Sean Robertson join us on this call, and looking forward to that partnership moving forward. Thank you everyone for your time, and hope I will see you on the next one next week. Take care.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Amy.